Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Crubcast. We have an additional dancer here on the YouTube side of things today. It's actually our special guest for the episode, but first, my name's Kevin, the host of today's episode. I'm also known as the Golden Bolt, and along with me are three of my co-crubbers today. First off, Moriarty. Hi, Em. How you doing, bud?
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Perfect. Awesome. And we're also here with the person who stopped dancing too early, Nico, all hail buckets.
It's a papa's party. What's up, gamers?
Coward. And our special guest for the episode, the unofficial 9th member of Crub, I think I would say, Peter, also known as Minimme on the YouTube front. How's it going, bud?
It's going well. Hi. I'm the honorary Australian correspondent for Crub. I'm happy to report the news, all gaming news coming out of Australia, which there is a lot of, so I'm happy to be here.
Live on the war front. Down
That's
under.
right. Yeah, no,
Beautiful.
we're struggling for water down here.
That's
He's our
true.
man
Shit.
on the street.
He's in Mad Max world. I didn't think about that. Oh, God. So we don't really have any of our usual prompts for today's episode to start discussion. We're just going to kind of chat with Minnie a bit because while we've chatted with him a bunch over the years for a long, long time now, a lot of folks that maybe are in his fandom don't necessarily know a ton about him outside of his content. So let's start with a little bit about you. If you want to give us a little little Tinder profile or something.
Tinder
male,
specifically. We
Yeah,
want
Tinder
Male
something like
27 Sydney ASL. I'm Peter. You might know me as Mini-Me. I've been introduced already. But I'm Australian. I review obscure video games on the internet, and I don't often talk about myself in those videos, so I guess this is presenting as an opportunity to talk about who I actually am.
Yeah.
I guess I've spent the last 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years making YouTube videos, and me and Kevin, or Bolt, whatever you prefer.
I'm going to go
call
back
him.
and forth because I usually go with Mini or as just popped up on screen 8. That'll be the only time we acknowledge that.
We're not talking about that.
No, that's it.
I just call him Snacks. I call Kevin Snacks.
That's fair. Snacks works
True.
too.
So me and Snacks met on this forum, not a forum, a Reddit page, Reddit Discord server. This is nerdy. I had 100 subscribers and he had 350, and I was incredibly jealous.
I remember this. This was So this was the NewTuber server. We've talked about it a bunch on prior episodes. That's where a lot of the YouTuber crew that M and myself and the whole Crub crew know. We met through NewTubers. So I remember back in the day that you had mentioned that way later when we'd become friends, and then it was funny because in the same breath I was like, yeah, but then you went from 100 to 40,000 in a day, and I was like, God damn, how do you do that? So it was a mutual jealousy until now we're just kind of we send each other our scripts and stuff. So any Mini-Me script, any of the Golden Bolt script, it usually has a little bit of the other person in there in terms of proofreading and stuff.
Yeah, for the past handful of years, we basically send each other Google Docs and then shit all over them.
It's pretty accurate. I'm not gonna lie.
Can I swear here? Maybe
No, yeah,
I have
you
to
can.
mute that.
You're good.
Okay,
You're
good. And then, then the other person goes through and fixes them. So every single script of mine is good because Kevin has read through them, which has been fantastic. And I attribute a lot of my videos actually being good to that. But I don't know. It's me. Hi, Peter. What do you want to know? Ask me a question. AMA.
So before we get into some more introductions in terms of how you integrated with the Crub crew, Nico, for example, has only been speaking to you for about 10 minutes, despite you guys being pen pals for years.
Yeah, I was going to say, literally before we started recording, I was like, oh yeah, dude, I feel like you're my pen pal. Literally, we talk quite a lot in the server. We talk about music and stuff, right? And it's so I feel like I know you.
Yeah, it feels it's so what he's saying is we've never actually voice chatted, but we've chatted in text for a really, really long time, just linking each other music and posting terrible memes. So it's funny. It's funny finally chatting to you. It's a good time.
Yeah, we're having fun here.
Dude, absolutely.
Before we jump into anything else, though, I did remember, as you said your name, I should have known this ahead of time, that we do have an icebreaker for every guest of the Crubcast, which is that you need to give us a quick Joe Swanson Family Guy impression. Bring me the Swanson. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Peter.
Okay, it's Patrick. I can't even do an American accent. Hey, Peter. Hey, Peter.
We'll take that.
I'm a cop.
I think we should do Australian accents too, just in solidarity.
I feel like in solidarity, I'm going to go through one by one.
Oh, God.
Nico, you're up. Do your best. G'day, mate. How you going?
G'day, mate. How you going? Shrimp on the barbie.
Oh, rough.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
M, you're up.
Yeah, yeah.
That might be the most accurate one of the three of us, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I'm okay with that one.
I will. I'll try and do it as Joe Swanson. I'll give myself an extra challenge because I'm not an accent person. I'm not good at accents. Good day, Peter. That's it. That's all I got. Joe Swanson's gimmick is that he doesn't have like a voice. He just has his own voice. You know, here's my Bernie Sanders impression. Hey, Peter. I'm Bernie Sanders. Vote for me.
Jennifer Coolidge.
It was my turn. So, anyway, that's out of the way. Hopefully you enjoyed that. As a reminder to everyone before we jump into things, this is available on YouTube at youtube.com/@CrubOfficial. Most of our episodes are recorded live as well. You can follow us on YouTube or Twitter to get more of that stuff. We're everywhere at CrubOfficial. These are also available if you go to crub.org. In the audio realm, you can find every single audio platform for podcasts that matters. I will still stand by that today. So if you go to crub.org, you can leave us a nice little review. That really helps things. Yeah, do that. But if you have a bad review, don't.
Yeah, don't leave that one.
No, we don't need it. We're positive.
If you have a bad review, put it in the YouTube comments.
Yeah. Shit on us on YouTube. We're used to it.
Let's just get right into this with Pete. Can you share the process behind choosing games that you decide to review?
Oh, yeah. So sometimes I just have a bunch of games lined up in my head and I try them all and they're all terrible and I get sad because I don't have anything to talk about. But usually what I do is I'll kick back, pop in a few GameCube discs, a few Wii discs, a few PS2 ISOs on PCSX2, and I'll just sort of happily try them out. And my main metric for whether I want to talk about a game is more to do with whether it is interesting rather than good or bad. So if a game is absolutely terrible, as long as it's interesting, I'm happy. If a game is brilliant but kind of boring, whatever, don't care. So yeah, the main thing when it comes to video games, and sometimes what'll be interesting about it is more to do with its development history than its actual gameplay or anything like that. So I'll often try and track down a developer to talk to and do an interview and chat with them. Like I did the band Queen made a game in the late 90s and it was terrible and kind of boring and sort of a dodgy Resident Evil clone. But it sort of went through development hell and the band themselves were on the board, like dictating creative decisions. So I wanted to go and talk to the guy who made that. And that was really, really fascinating. So I'm always looking for an angle, you know? It's propaganda. But it's not hard for me to pick a video. Like Kevin will know, like I'm always just shooting him ideas and he's like, that's a great idea. And then I never really act on it. Like, I guess my brain over the last, my whole life has been so obsessed. Like, when I was a kid, right, I used to just, click Wikipedia pages. Like, I literally just hung out on Wikipedia, just reading about video games. So I've sort of become this really, ultra nerd book of knowledge type person. Yeah. So I'll often know if a video game is interesting before I've even played it a lot of the time. And I'm always looking for stuff that is obscure as well. I don't want to cover stuff that people have talked about a lot because it just feels redundant. But
it's really hard, I think, to choose what your I don't know, niche is, because you've got Vin Diesel or racing games, weird games, graphically impressive games, mobile games, right? And then you're also doing Crime Boss.
Yeah, and it's funny doing Crime Boss Rocket City starring Michael Madsen and Chuck Norris, because when I've reviewed that, and I never really review new video games, maybe once a year at most, but even when I reviewed that, people were like, God, this is the most mini-me game ever made. I can't believe you've covered this. And there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek celebrity worship on my channel. So I'm often talking about Vin Diesel and Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk is in every thumbnail. Yeah. So when a game came out, I guess that was a crime game, which I do a lot of crime games, and full of B-list celebrities who I often celebrate. I guess it just fit the channel perfectly. But yeah, I guess it is very eclectic. A through line that I've noticed in my videos for the most part is they're actually set in contemporary or realistic locations about 95% of the time. I think that's the only, like, sort of between each video, it's usually set in the real world rather than like a fantasy or sci-fi. But otherwise, there's not a lot of connecting chain between them.
Well, so I think it's interesting because you had mentioned the whole Wikipedia thing, and I think I've mentioned either on the podcast or one of the pre-podcast recordings we did that way back in the day when I was like maybe like 10, I've always been a Wikipedia fiend myself in that I'll go through, I'll use it as a starting point, and I'll just research the hell out of something in some ADHD hyperfocus binge. And back in like middle school, that equated to me like trying to fix both like the Ratchet and Clank fan wiki and the Family Guy fan wiki, a show that I haven't watched in 10 years at this point.
Peter.
Hey, Peter. And so it's interesting that we both kind of had that mind meld there for one, but also that the three of us that do gaming YouTube content, sorry, Nico, here, all kind of had a similar end game path to where we are today. We all started pretty much, I mean, technically, Peter, you started a little bit earlier with some earlier gameplay type things, like proto mini-me stuff. But we all started pretty much in 2016, 7 years ago, right at the same time, just about. And we all independently found our way to talking about the history and the backstory of different games or the properties surrounding those games. And I think that's kind of interesting because it shows a way, in a way, the shift that YouTube has made for gaming creators over the years,
Yeah, it's funny to think about like how much the videos we make are the result of us shifting because of YouTube and shifting because of our tastes, and we are sculpted by the world we live in. Yeah. This is a deep existential question. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. Like when I was a kid, I used to obsess. I was a GameSpot fiend as well, because back in the day, GameSpot was a fantastic website. You could blog on there, you could make friends. There were forums. I like memorized review scores for like most games, which is very like. Why
Were you
do I
a
know
console
this information?
warser? Were you a console wars kid?
Yeah, dude. PS3 for life. Yeah, no. So like, I guess. Yeah, it's a funny thing because I think the thing that connected us more than being YouTubers, was probably the fact that we were all just like super video game nerds, honestly. Like me and Em have had long conversations about like late 90s, early 2000s PC games. And like,
I mean, we were all in the same Discord room, right? Reviewers List is where we all kind of built a friendship.
Yeah. That's right. But Reviewers List, the room name, was less about video game reviews and more just about talking shit about video games, which is funny to look back on. And it's funny that we all have such a big history with each other. I feel like I'm like this guy on the other side of the country that just like weaseled into your group chat and just like complains about landlords all day, and you just ignore it and it's fun.
No, we're all in favor. We all
somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to bring the levity.
That's right.
Well, and even worse was like, you were across the world, not to cut you off, Nico, but you were across the world. And if not for 2020 happening, we probably would have met up at Too Many Games.
That's right. I had my flights booked, my accommodation booked. I was gonna go fly up to New York and say hello, but it didn't happen. It's a bit sad. And now the US dollar is really high and the Australian dollar is really low, so it makes no sense for me to visit. So you guys should come here.
Yeah. See,
Nico,
Crub
I know you have
expense.
connections to Sydney.
Yeah.
Dude, I have relatives down there, man. And it's, I mean, I was down there, so I actually made a bad investment because I had some Australian dollars that I have just physical that I was waiting for the conversion rate to be better.
Nah, they're getting worse, man. You're out of luck.
See, now's the time to go to Australia, though. Now's the time we make a Crub business trip. We expense it to the company.
Yeah, dude.
I'm sure we can afford it, clearly.
That's right.
Yeah. We definitely won't go deeper in debt with that one.
So Nico, you had mentioned how you guys talk about music pretty frequently in the server as well, because obviously we're all a bunch of game nerds, but it's not just like we only talk about games when we're not just talking about games here. So I know you had some other icebreaker questions you wanted to throw out to Peter, and B, if you want to share a little bit about those music discussions, if any of them are particularly interesting or notable.
Yeah, I mean, mostly Kid Cudi, right?
Yeah, Kid Cudi. When Man on the Moon 3 dropped, I think we just talked about that for like 2 months.
I remember that, yeah.
Oh, man. It's a great record. I mean, that was a pretty, like, strange time in the world, right? Because that was kind of like, I don't know, that dropped in 2020, right? Like, it was the same year as COVID, and it was just, like, the first, like, good music that we had released that year, and so I was just so pumped to have somebody to talk about it with.
Yeah, dude. And I feel like the fact that it was Cudi, and like all Cudi talks about is like mental health issues in every single song, and we're all just locked down and depressed from COVID. It's like, damn, this record just hit at the right time.
Oh man! And plus, since our server is like everyone's in the sauce, it's always it's good to have that release, you know.
Yeah.
Finally, dude, not talking about video games.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you know, so obviously, like, you make a lot of videos around like racing game, like not racing game, but like car based games, right? And then some crime games, some skateboarding, and extreme sports. Those are the ones that I wanted to focus on and ask you about. Like, do you do any of that stuff like IRL? Or you like, do you go to, I don't know, do you have car shows in Australia, or do you
they have vehicles there?
Do you do crimes?
They all have spikes on the wheels.
Do you skate?
Yeah, I'm actually real deep in the crime world. I shouldn't talk about it. This is why I never talk about myself. No, we do have cars. We are 4 wheels. They're pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys have them, but they're sort of these big metallic boxes with
Never heard of it.
I guess, yeah, I do skateboard, not as much as I used to. So growing up as a teenager, it was almost an everyday thing. Made a lot of friends through skateboarding. Love skateboarding. Love the whole scene, really. I know it feels very juvenile for me to talk about at this age.
Well, no, see, I think it's interesting because the Tony Hawk games and the skateboarding fad really only ever hit the US in a broader sense. So I always found it interesting that it kind of reached you guys down there to a similar capacity, where like if you look at the European sales, or that whole MTV era didn't really hit outside of maybe the UK and anywhere else in Europe. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the Tony Hawk games, Tony Hawk's Underground 2, is basically like MTV the game. And as far as like that's kind of one of my only real exposures to that whole MTV culture. So it's kind of like a window into another world in video game form. It's very strange. But yeah, skateboarding's huge here. We have skateboard parks everywhere. We have a lot of pro skaters coming out of Australia. Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's been a pretty important part of my life, and I think I attribute a part of the reason I skateboard to the Tony Hawk games. Like, I think that kind of kicked everything off.
Yeah.
And when I think about video games that probably impacted my life personally more than any other, probably the Tony Hawk games, right? Like, I bonded with people over the Tony Hawk games. I've been to a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater cover band show, and it was like amazing.
Wow.
Like, people were going crazy, chanting every single song. We were like breaking the wall of that pub. It was great fun. But yeah, as far as like cars and crime goes, I wouldn't download a car, you know, but I've downloaded some shit in my time, I guess you'd say.
Oh, that's fair. I think I phrased the question poorly. I guess, like, are you into cars? Do you do you gearhead at all, or like? You know?
I feel like I'm like. There was probably a turning point in my life where I could have gotten super into cars and didn't.
That's fair.
I know quite a lot about cars, and I know a lot of gearheads, and I know a lot of mechanics. And I know a lot about car history, especially like vintage Japanese autos. But I drive a Hyundai, you know, I'm not that big into cars, but definitely have a fascination with racing. You know, I'm pretty big into the F1. So,
yeah. How you feel about Max Verstappen?
I like him. I'm impressed with him. I think he's got a bit of an edge to him. He's got a funny voice. He's a cool dude. I like him.
Oh man, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I got to be honest. I did not expect for Max Verstappen to be mentioned here. I'm really pleased that this happened.
I would have
also
said
a fan.
Ever on the Crubcast, I never would have expected.
Yeah,
that.
never, not once, and I'm really happy.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So I'm going to follow up on that a little bit here, Pete. So you personally are a well-rounded person who is not a simulation, and you actually exist on every plane that you fly on. So you also love movies, and those do tend to spill over into your games and your content.
It's true. Yeah, I've been a big movie guy. My older brother is huge into movies. And when I was growing up, he dragged me along to each one. I remember in 2012, I think we saw over 100 movies, which if you average that out, that's about 2 a week. Like in the cinema I'm talking about. We used to go often. Wild. We had like memberships that were like paying back so many reward points. So yeah, I guess I'm a big movie guy. It's a funny thing because with video games, like I have a compulsion to just really like talk about them on the internet. Like I really want to just like annoy people with my video game opinions, but with film and music, it's more of like a personal escape. So I'm more happy to just go and see a movie, and like even if the movie sucks, I generally just have a great time just sitting there watching a movie. Yeah, and a lot of my movie knowledge, I like to think bleeds over into my videos. I do cover a lot of movie games. I'm pretty into like old cinema as well. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I don't have a lot of like nuanced opinions on or controversial opinions on movies or anything. I spend a lot of time watching them, I guess.
You like Avatar, though.
How old are we talking? We talking like 1920s or like...
No, like 60s, 70s is
okay.
Probably where I start getting real into it. And 50s, I suppose. When it's like 40s and 30s, it gets a little too like, yeah, see? Like, you know...
Yeah, I was gonna say
transatlantic.
I was gonna say you like Avatar, so that is your one controversial movie opinion here in the U.S.
Oh, I love Avatar.
It's funny because we were talking about at one point how people were surprised that Avatar 2 was doing so well, but the backlash to Avatar was pretty much only, again, it's one of those weird U.S. things. Like obviously there were people elsewhere, especially since we're a global internet society now, that really went against that movie hard because why is this the number one movie of all time in terms of success? But then you saw like videos, and you sent videos of like a French theater getting the first trailer for Avatar 2 and the theater erupting of like regular people, not us fucking nerds, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
I think Avatar's a really... I think the conversation that's surrounded Avatar for the last decade is like really fascinating. Because the thing that I see people knock down Avatar with, and I love Avatar, and it's funny, people often say like, who even likes this movie? Like, is this anyone's favorite movie? Me! I'm the guy! I like this movie!
Does that include Avatar 2, though?
I like Avatar 2 quite a lot, but it's a lot more like, if someone says they don't like Avatar 2, I'm like, yeah, right, no, I get it, I get it. But one's interesting because people will knock it down, they'll say it's generic, you know, and it has like, the most generic story ever. And I guess the risk that movie took was spending like over $200 million on these giant weird blue people that no one's guaranteed to like go and see a movie starring these freaky looking blue people. I don't know. I find the world building in that movie to be magic, and I find the whole thing very absorbing. And yeah, I guess I'm just surprised it got a big backlash. Yeah.
I think it's fascinating when you look at the two of them, how it's changed, because with Avatar 1, right, the only people who were willing to be the blue monsters were the smaller actors. And yet in Avatar 2, you have every major actor being a CGI creation. I think it's really fascinating how that's changed.
Yeah. Avatar 2 is almost... Avatar 2 is really sloppy. Like you look at Avatar 1 and it's like the perfect 3-act structure. It's like a very traditionally structured film. You look at Avatar 2 and it's just like throw shit at the wall, see what happens. The pace is all over the place. The ideas are all over the place. The things that it focuses on are just strange. And I kind of love it for it, but I get why it's not as loved.
It makes sense too, because I mean that movie was in production for 12 years, you know. Like,
that's right.
At a certain point, you can't get past the development hell. And I guess that brings us full circle, because we always talk about development hell and stuff, again, going back to the content side of things. And that brings me to something that I also wanted to bring up in terms of the content interview portion of this. I've always been really genuinely impressed by how many times you've reinvented your style or your content approach while keeping a similar style to it, I guess is rather what I'd say. So you started, your first big break was the graphically impressive Game Boy games, graphically impressive FPS retro type stuff, and then you pivoted into movie tie-in games, and then you pivoted into weird PSP ports and spin-offs, and you've just continued to do it, which is something that you usually can't do on YouTube. You usually can't pivot well. It's just because your audience is locked in, and they want the one thing, and they come for that one thing. So,
and in each case, it ended up still being Pete,
and better as well in terms of growth. In terms of, you could see the evolution content wise. Yeah. It's fascinating. So, what drove that desire to change? 2-3 years in for a lot of the times up until recently. This time you haven't really done any big I want to change things, because I think you found your groove, I would say.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. Very nice of you.
Of course.
So I got my first big break by doing list videos called 5 Graphically Impressive GBA Games. That was the pivot away from doing those was the most conscious decision when it comes to one of these pivots I ever made.
Yeah.
It was a big, I need to stop doing these and I need to start doing something else. And I guess a lot of that was spawned out of when I made my first 5 graphically impressive video. There was a lot of other YouTubers doing the exact same sort of thing immediately afterwards, because they saw my video did well. And I don't hold any spite towards them. It was more my feeling was oh, other people can do this too. What's special about me? What's special about my opinions on these graphically impressive video games? And then I saw Digital Foundry, the channel as a whole, and those guys are just graphics geniuses.
Yeah.
And when I'm back here just talking about the polygons look good, when they're talking about dithering and MIP mapping and all these technical terms, whereas I just didn't feel competent enough to be talking about the things I was talking about. And I also didn't feel the drive to learn more about computer graphics to make sure I was, competent. So at that time I was doing video game reviews alongside my 5 graphically impressive videos, but those reviews didn't get any views, or they didn't get many views, I should say. They weren't very popular. So I kept thinking I need a way to get people to click on these videos, because I much prefer making them, and I feel like that's where my skill set lies, because I like to think I'm a well-rounded person who knows a lot about video games, and I think that's, it's not a unique thing on YouTube, but I find a lot of reviews are often from people who clearly only consume video games, and I like to think that's my point of difference, where I'm a bit more I can talk about how this video game fits into culture more. Anyway, not to say I'm better than other reviewers, that's just the angle I like to take.
Say it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I am better than other reviewers. I'm better than everyone else on YouTube.
You've already said you're a cop. You've already said it without an accent, without a Joe Swanson voice, that you're a cop. So it's already over.
I mean,
that's right.
We have, so Em and Kevin and I have a mutual friend who says that they only watch your videos and they don't watch Em's or Kevin's videos.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I live with this man. He's a roommate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. I think he's come around in recent years. But yeah, so you started with the graphically impressive, and then I missed a step in the evolution, which was the Java phone games era, which was a natural progression when you look at it looking back. But when you think about it in the moment of, I'm going to go from graphically impressive Game Boy games and insert console here to this fucking Nokia brick that no one cares about. It's such a risk to take, and given this wasn't a point where it was a reliable income or a secondary income, tertiary income, it was just kind of a thing you were doing. But how was that experience in pivoting to that, and how did that then inform how you've been able to do it a couple times since, and now it's just every video this is a mini video, and it doesn't matter what the topic is, people are going to click?
Yeah, it was funny. I remember I told my partner my next video is about like Far Cry 2 mobile developed for like flip phones, and she was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like who is gonna watch that? I don't know that it's a stroke of genius as far as it is just things I find super fascinating, and I hope other people do too. I do try and look for an angle to make people click. So like I wouldn't cover random mobile game that no one's heard of. I would cover Far Cry 2 on mobile or Hitman on mobile. And that way people will be like, oh, I know Far Cry 2. I wonder what the mobile version's like, you know. But I guess the philosophy that I've held since pivoting away from 5 graphically impressive videos is just cover things that I find super, super fascinating. And for the most part, other people will too. Not always. Sometimes I like cross too far along some sort of threshold. But yeah, I kind of try and like do it in waves a bit, you know. So it's a bit like, for a while I'm going to cover the interesting GBA ports of games, and then I'm going to cover the Far Cry, the mobile ports of games until I get bored of those. And it's these waves that have come and gone, and people have thankfully watched pretty much all of my different waves of ideas that now I feel like I'm in a position where I can just sort of cover anything I find interesting, and I have a big enough audience to be like, of course he's covering this, and it's just some like random fucking obscure shit. But it didn't feel like a brave decision. Maybe I'm delusional when I decided to cover mobile games, but when I like came up with the idea of like looking at all this crazy mobile games, I was like, yeah, people will love this. And then I talked to other people and they're like, you're an idiot. No one's going to click this. And then I did it and people clicked it. So, you know, I guess I'm very thankful for that.
The hope is that we all get to that point, right? Where we're able to do the Xbox Ahoy thing of putting out a video about 4-Byte Burger, a piece of art we saw in a magazine 30 years ago, right? Like that's, and people, millions of people clicked on that video. He put in an insane amount of effort into it. And we all want to be there, I think. Yeah. And that's the goal. Like, that's my goal. I have all these games and things that I want to talk about that I know nobody else cares about in the slightest. They couldn't be getting like, no.
Yeah.
So I just want to be able to make those videos. That's the goal, right? To get enough videos for you people that I can make videos for me.
Yeah. And, I mean, I'm just
going to start titling songs 5 graphically impressive
you should make one song
just to try and garner clicks.
You should make one song that and just see what happens, actually. Like, genuinely.
It was going to be Minecraft Manhunt, but my wife left me. That was going to be the...
I'm straight up thinking, like, just title a random lo-fi song, 5 graphically impressive lo-fi beats.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's gotta be pop punk, because like they do do like stupid titles like that, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
dude, but Mini. So you know, I gotta say, like breaking into the mobile games and stuff, like I think it's the way that you say things is very unique and it's very engaging.
Thank you.
And you know, so like kind of take me through your process of like bringing in all of this eclectic stuff and just kind of making it digestible for people.
That's the process is, it's not so, it like, I guess it's something I've developed and comes naturally to me a lot. I don't like talking about story and graphics and gameplay and the different categories of like a traditional sort of IGN review.
Shots on the early Golden Bolt videos.
Well, no, what's funny is the final video that I did in that style was the LA Noire video that Minnie and I did together. That was the last video that had that style, because I'd already been looking to change. And the only reason I had it in the first place to jump through that was because I was always a writer as a kid, so I knew I had to limit myself. Because if I didn't limit myself, I would go for hours in one script, and then I would never have made more than 2 videos because they'd be an hour long, and I didn't know what I was doing. So it's funny seeing that evolution as well, to go against the evolution that Minnie's about to talk about, where his style is very conversational. and very like it's a buddy drinking a beer and shooting the shit with you, while also talking about sometimes some really cool, like fascinating themes of development or of, I'll say the word ludonarrative, you know? So it's interesting. But anyway, to throw the volleyball back to you.
Yeah. So when I like chose the YouTubers I've been influenced by, one of the major ones is Classic Game Room, which was sort of just this super conversational, just kick back and talk about video games channel. And then I guess on the other end of the spectrum, I've been super into channels like Super Bunny Hop and Errant Signal, and sort of these channels that are that talk about high concepts, you know, like way higher concepts than I talk about usually. And I guess taking those influences forward, I've tried and like merged them. I've tried to talk about high concepts in a way that's translatable to the, you know, kick back, have a beer sort of person. So it was funny. Probably the furthest I pushed that bar was in my Driver 3 video, where I was talking about like the impacts of modernism on Driver 3. And I knew writing that video that I had to sort of strip back what modernism is to its most like basic of concepts, explain that and extrapolate forwards. And I think where a lot of my motivation lies is sort of bringing the high concept of like themes that go through video games, or I don't know, like the way video games make you feel more than any specific technical detail. I like to strip those back down to like the common man drinking a beer sort of conversation style. And I think that's kind of my ultimate goal in most of my videos, which is why the 5 graphically impressive videos never really made sense to me, because I just don't like talking about detail as much.
That makes sense. And even those were... No, go ahead, Nico, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha.
I
didn't have a full seg in mind. I realized I was going to say words, and then I didn't realize what they were going to be. So
yeah, me too. I think we did the same
pivot question.
Thing.
Name we're too positive. What grinds your gears? Name a gaming pet peeve of yours, or a movie pet peeve. One of each. Give me one of each.
And a music pet peeve while we're at it.
Yeah, go for the hat trick.
All right. Well, yesterday I was complaining to a mate, and I know you love this game, Kevin. I was complaining to a mate about how much I dislike Spider-Man 2018 Insomniac Games.
Okay.
The thing that grinds my gears, I do not like this game.
Yeah. No, you know what? Hold on. Hold the fucking phone.
Let him cook. Yeah. Let him cook.
No.
Let him cook.
Fuck you. Okay, I'm downloading that shit right now on my Steam Deck, you piece of shit.
That's a terrible game. You should just cancel that download.
He had one in the chamber. Oh my god.
I just been sitting here like, when can I let this out? I don't like. Okay, I feel like that game is fun for like 10 minutes, and then it's like the most boring game ever for 20 hours.
Interesting.
And the fucking swinging in that game is so boring. Like so boring. Like the way like you swing towards the ground and you're about to hit the ground, you're like, oh, I stuffed up my swing. And then he just like recorrects and just keeps swinging and maintains his speed. Or when you hit a building and he just pings off and keeps swinging and maintains his speed. It's basically hold a button to go forward. And you just do that for like 20 hours. It's so boring. And like the bloody combat, the storytelling is like the most Marvel-ass shit. Like, fuck that. Boring as shit. The combat, don't rate that either. Just the most like derivative fucking... I don't know, Arkham style shit that's been barely extrapolated upon. I'm done with that game. I don't care about the sequel coming out. I'm very sad the sequel hasn't done anything to the swinging, it looks like. And I tried out Miles Morales recently. That bored me too.
Interesting.
So, no good.
Well, hey, at least
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree on the combat. We talked about this before. I have a problem with the fact that Spider-Man takes so many hits to knock down a regular thug.
Yeah,
you should be punching the guy, and the guy should go down.
It's so boring.
It's interesting because I think it depends on how you're playing the game. Because one of the things that I've said about that game is it's a fine game up until you realize, and this is something that not a lot of people that have played Spider-Man are going to realize, it's a Ratchet and Clank game. you are supposed to hot swap your gadgets. You're not playing as combat Spider-Man. You're playing as I have 47,000 gadgets Spider-Man. So you drop an anti-grav mine, you drop a web bomb, and they go flying, and they're all stuck to walls, and you win in one hit. It's stuff like that where like he's not the strongest one. So I get where you're coming from, and I don't know. I think that I agree with you to some extent on the story. I think the story for what it is, it's fine. You know, it's very clear that Insomniac didn't have, not necessarily the time, but they didn't have the writing staff capable of making the 3-act story they wanted to. Yeah, and probably some level of that was related to just they needed the game out this particular year because, you know, XYZ, they're probably in talks to be bought out at that point. There's a lot of other factors that lead to that stuff. Not that any of those changed the result of the game or anything, you know. But
I gotta address the swinging thing, man. The swinging.
Yeah, I disagree with that entirely.
It's so boring.
It's so. Were you always swinging?
What kind of movement
really
do you like
slow?
in video games? Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
I get what you're saying. I get that when you screw up a swing, it slows you down. Ooh. But the thing that annoys me, like, if I'm swinging at the ground at like a 45, it shouldn't just correct me and slow me down and keep me going. I should hit the ground and die. That's how it should work.
There's a quote in Spider-Man the DLC actually, which I'm guessing you didn't play. Do your fucking homework, kid.
Good guess.
But they're teaching Miles. Obviously, it's not a spoiler that Miles is Spider-Man at this point. He's got a fucking game. They're teaching Miles via phone call some of the stuff. Like Miles is like, "Hey, when do we get to train? When do we get to train?" And Peter's like, "Did you do your calculus homework I gave you?" And Miles is like, "Why the fuck did you give me homework? I don't get it." And then Peter, while swinging on this phone call, is like, "Well, how much would this pendulum require in terms of a parabolic swing to, like, how much momentum do you need, how much rope do you need, etc." And then Miles realizes, oh, you're doing calculus every time you swing a web. And so it doesn't explain away the fact that, yes, depending on how you swing, you can just hit the ground, and there's even an upgrade that lets you bounce off of the ground. Like, you can just do a jump and get back to it.
Hate it.
But it is one of those that's explained in game for one, but also I think that the if you do it right, that swinging is faster than most other things that I played on that generation of systems, movement-wise.
Yeah,
is the thing. So I think it's a skill issue. I'll level with you.
Oh, see, I felt like the point. I feel like I'm defending myself because you've insulted me, but I felt like the skill ceiling was too easy to hit.
I mean, it's a normie game. That's fair. I get you.
Yeah, it's you know, that's more my complaint with it. I get it. It's mass market, whatever. But
I was gonna say, like, that's not for you guys. That's for, like, me.
Well, and I think that's
Right.
what I like about the game is that it is not that it's necessarily like mass market, like you said, but that there is depth to it underneath. Because every Insomniac game carries that DNA. So because, obviously, I've played a lot of Insomniac games in my day, as soon as it clicked to me, like, you know, partway through Act 2 of my first playthrough, I realized, oh, and again, the DLC even teaches you this, where it's like there are some combat challenges that say you only have 2 powers. You have to combine them to win. And so you have to beat, like, a whole arena of enemies using, I don't know, the impact web and the spider bot or something. I don't know, one of those sorts of deals where they were like, right. Yeah, we realized that so many players didn't engage with the game in the way that maybe they hoped they did, so they focused the DLC around the complaints that they would have gotten from the more core player base of the, you know, the 2 million of the fucking 30 million copies that game sold. It's like the highest selling PlayStation exclusive ever. It's wild.
Interesting.
It's that in Gran Turismo, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there you
like,
go.
Like one.
Man.
Like Gran Turismo 1.
That ain't right. That ain't right.
All right, we've grilled you enough about this.
Fair.
What's your movie and music pet peeves?
Damn. Movie pet peeves. This isn't controversial in anywhere near the set. In fact, this is probably a very popular opinion with movie pet peeves. But I guess just the way that, like, the blockbuster film has kind of died in favor of, you know, Marvel?
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about that on last week's episode, actually.
Oh, well, there you go. My pet peeve with cinema is you never see, like, $100 million movie that isn't tied to a brand. Except for Avatar. You know, how good's Avatar? You know, that first movie?
Oh, yeah, Disney's Avatar. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The thing is, you do still see park, right? Some of it, right? Like we just saw... I guess it's kind of ancillary, right? It's out there and it's not quite as big, but we were talking in Crub, well, I was talking about Steven Soderbergh's recut of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he took it and desaturated and removed all the dialogue and all the music and just put in the scores from different movies and let it kind of do its thing. So there's still stuff out there that's interesting and fascinating, but boy, nobody sees it. The Marvelization of films, right? Everything you see, it's like, oh, this is MCU humor.
Yeah. I don't know why I sincerely thought you were going to mention Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
The best film of the past, decade. I love it. Everyone, you should go watch it right now if you're listening. Go watch Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. It's incredible. It makes you cry.
So, moving right along, we do have one sort of topic for today's episode that we did bring to the table, which was actually a Patreon-suggested question, although not necessarily for Crub. It was actually one of my patrons that asked that. Although, if you go to patreon.com/Crub, we do have a Patreon where for $5 a month, you can enter the exclusive founder tier for the time being, which gives you access to all exclusive behind-the-scenes content and bonus content, stuff like we're going through every Mario Party board as the Crub crew, every game, every board over the next however long that takes, stuff like that. There's an exclusive Slippin' Jimmy podcast discussion. The discussion based around the Slippin' Jimmy spin-off of Better Call Saul, the spin-off of Breaking Bad, where we're going to equate each episode of Slippin' Jimmy to one season of Better Call Saul and make a deep artistical analysis of that. So patreon.com/Crub. By the time that you tune into this episode, that will most likely be live. And if not, pretend you're watching a few days from then and then go check it then. So the question that I had received was, with so much focus around the graphical improvements that games have had, obviously it's always been a graphics thing since day one. It's been how realistic even NES graphics could be. We're hitting a sort of a breaking point to that, where it's so hard for developers to continue to raise the bar because there's only so many man hours you can put into things, and even things like AI and procedural generation are only going to do so much to help improve the person sitting behind a desk slaving for 40 hours a day to make an 8K texture of Aloy from Horizon's tongue for photo mode that only 5 people will ever notice. That's there for some reason. That's real. Trust me.
At least eight people, because Crub noticed. All of Crub noticed.
That's true. That's true. I think it's actually one of the thumbnails for the podcast on YouTube, which is
it is, yes.
Okay, we didn't change that one. Good, thank God. No. So the question then is, what non-graphical improvements do you want to see in the next generation of games, or the rest of this generation of games, depending on what you want to go with, in the next few years?
And if you need to think about it, I'm actually very happy to jump into this because I've thought about this. And so I've split it into 3 items, and I know I tend to go off on these and have these long diatribes, but I've already edited it down, so I'll be fast.
Okay.
The first is improvements, which I consider to be inevitable, right? So outside of things like multilingual support, which I expect will become nearly ubiquitous across double and AAA and III games, or enhanced voice recognition, or improved player matching in SBMM. And the thing I'm really excited for is adaptive storytelling. Because I think, generative AI might be used in some of that, and I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that yet, but I'm really, really excited for the future, where these sort of adaptive narratives that change based on player actions become more advanced and more immersive. Imagine Until Dawn or Dragon Age or The Witcher, but the world really does change, and the people in it change based off of how you play the game. And I think this is absolutely inevitable over the next couple of years.
Or I'll throw out Fallout, because then Fallout could have a story. Again, that'd be nice. we got a lot of YouTube shorts for that one. I don't care.
I mean, Kevin and I have spoken about this, believe it or not, in our early days of friendship, because I was going on about decision tree type games, and I was saying, well, why don't they have different endings? Why do they all funnel back? Why don't these games have a billion endings, and then we can, have a lot of replay value, right? And I think with the proliferation of generative, or rather imitative AI, let's be real, what it is, we might be able to see that happen. That's an incredibly interesting point, Moriarty.
It'd be for like the connective tissue between things, I think, more than the the actual end.
Yeah, I don't want AI written stories, but
Yeah.
I do really. I'm so excited by the idea of not having Mass Effect 3's ending be what it is, right, in the next game. I'm looking forward to Mass Effect 5's ending being my fucking story.
And it would be so tough to do on a multi-game scope, too. I mean, that's what Mass Effect ran into, is that you were never going to get a Mass Effect 3 that didn't have that problem, you know? It just kind of comes with the territory. It was just a shame that they screwed the pooch on that one. Before we jump into your second one, Nico, do you have one you want to throw out? We'll kind of round table this.
Yeah, come back to me in a minute. I'm still cooking.
Peter, do you have one?
I do.
Okay,
sort of. Well, I don't know if it's an improvement as much as
changes
it is a
are
trend
fine.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
So in the mid 2000s, there was a series of big budget first person games that focused on being immersive, and they were sort of like, we're going to remove the heads up display, we're going to remove like numbered based systems from this game. It was games like Far Cry 2, Condemned Criminal Origins, The Chronicles of Riddick, the King Kong game.
Let's list games that I've covered.
Yeah, games that I've covered. Like Call of Duty 4 was kind of one of them as well. Like the way the Call of Duty series trended, especially with the campaigns.
Yeah.
It was all about just placing you in these situations in a way that I feel like first-person games and video games in general have then went on to trend away from and be more like, we're going to chuck a big heads-up display on the screen and have all these systems and upgrades and all that sort of shit. And the way that sort of game design exists now is either in VR or in horror games, and kind of that's it.
I think that makes sense.
So do you like...
Go ahead.
Do you like the diegetics of it, where they're pulling up the map and looking at it? Is that the part that you
love it? I love that stuff, and I think video games are very powerful because they can immerse you in their worlds almost better than any other medium, and I don't think AAA games have taken advantage of that as much as that small window in the 2000s did.
So is the best game ever made Trespasser?
Trespasser was way too early on it. The best game ever made is Far Cry 2. Thanks for asking. End the podcast.
To jump on what you said, though, I think we talked about this a little before it came out. I think you will really like Tears of the Kingdom in that regard when you get around to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you've never played Breath of the Wild either, I believe, right? You played a little bit?
I have. I don't know. I stopped playing after like 10 hours.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I played a bit of it.
Tears of the Kingdom does a lot in terms of having like it still has a HUD, but you can essentially turn it off. It's just based on your whims, for one. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned Call of Duty 4 in there, because I think Call of Duty 4 is the game that then killed that trend indirectly by being so popular. Because that made the FPS go from a very popular thing. Obviously, Halo 2 existed, Halo 3 was out the same year. Those things existed, and that's just to say stuff on console, of course. But then when you see how overnight huge Call of Duty 4 became, and how much it changed the blueprint by which all first-person shooters and multiplayer shooters started to follow, it kind of makes sense that VR, not the hobbyists, the enthusiasts' system of choice, if for people that want those immersive types, I don't want to say immersive sims, but those immersive types of first-person experiences, it makes sense that it ended up getting relegated there over time because Call of Duty became almost too popular for the genre to be able to handle healthily.
Yeah. I think there was in the 2000s, because graphics technology was pushing forward so quickly, there was a push alongside that to make things as realistic as possible. Whereas nowadays, I feel like the main motivator for AAA games is making as much money as possible for the most part. And the way that they do that most of the time is through sort of upgrades and system-based content. And Call of Duty, the multiplayer, is kind of half responsible for that too, because, it introduced all those RPG mechanics into the multiplayer. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things I miss and I wish we saw more of outside of the indie scene.
I will jump off of that and tell you mine, which is I want the mini-map to stop. That's the clickbait title version of what I want. But one of the things that I think I hate nowadays about the modern gaming land space in the AAA scene is the thing you mentioned about
GPS?
how Peter, you mentioned things about the main focus is to make money, which is finally the end game of when the 90s, when all those telecom companies and major TV movie studios were buying into games with endless budgets to try and be the ones that would capitalize and make money off that field. We finally got there, which sucks.
Yeah. And not to interject.
No, go ahead.
Like, it's always been about making money.
Yeah, sure.
It's just the thing that appealed to people while the graphics technology was improving so fast was, I want my new console to put the most realistic looking game on this console, so that's what people were making. But now,
and even then, if you go back to that 90s era, like you had, I'll go with Universal for example. Universal and Fox and Disney all went huge into the gaming land space during that PS1 and 64, mainly PS1 era, because that was when things were cheap to produce on discs. And Universal had an infinite budget. They had a blank check given to Mark Cerny, of all people, to say, get any studio, get any property you possibly can. We don't care. And that gave Mark Cerny an endless budget to find games that he wanted to see made. Because of that.
And then he said, "Party on, Wayne."
And then, and then he measured your ears for the new PlayStation earbuds that are coming with the Wii U or whatever. Anyway, as far as HUDs go, one of the things that bothers me the most is that all the time that those developers, those designers put into each aspect of, especially an open world, where it has to be as realistic as possible or as immersive as possible. If it's not realistic, it has to feel like a world you could be in and that you can lose yourself in. They put hundreds of thousands of combined man hours into these things, only for you to not look at anything besides the top bar of your screen where the compass is. I loved Horizon Forbidden West. I think it's a really good game. But I realized after playing Ghost of Tsushima that I don't like that style of gameplay anymore. I think that I'm fundamentally disagree with a game that's so overstimulating that you're going to pull out your phone and look at it while you're running forward because you just know where the compass is. I loved the things that Ghost of Tsushima did that were in some way also inspired by Breath of the Wild, to take it a little further back. And so games like Breath of the Wild and Ghost and Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom all were masterful in their execution of, in Ghost's case, it's the missions where you have to look at footprints like every fucking third-person open-world game does now, but they made you physically look down at them. They made you say, look at the dirt, not the most elegant solution, but they made you peer into the world and stare at it and engage with the game on its own terms. And I found that so compelling that I can't really go back to old-style open-world games ever since. And so that's why an Elden Ring really appealed to me for the time that I put into it before, work got in the way. That's why Tears of the Kingdom, I did fucking everything in that game, minus the super extraneous 100% stuff. But I did every dungeon, every shrine, every quest. I did all of it because I engaged with the game on the terms that it had. In Tears of the Kingdom's case, it was terms that were, hey, do it on your terms. You can engage with this game however you want, which is how an open world game truly should be. If you break it, you should be rewarded.
I'll add on to that just slightly to say that one of the things that you don't see with these modern games, specifically because of that mini-map GPS obsession, is looking and seeing a landmark in the game and going there and it being an interesting experience.
Yes,
a thing, right? You go there and something happens. You get an encounter that isn't part of the story. There are a lot of games that I've been playing recently where I go, there's no reason to explore this game because I know that this right here is part of the story eventually. And coming here, I'm just going to have to come here again later because they know that gamers aren't doing that anymore. They're not looking around. It's like the old adage that you can put 50% of your work into the floor, right? And 40% into the walls and 10% on the ceiling because nobody looks up.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
God, I just had...
Go ahead.
I literally just had one of those moments. In Horizon Forbidden West, there's a quest where you have to look at the ceiling to find a vent to break down. And
it's hard.
It took me...
You can't see anything.
A half an hour.
Yeah.
Legitimately a half an hour it took me to find this vent.
There was
because
a discussion.
It was above me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. There was a discussion on Twitter around when that game came out that someone was upset about the yellow handholds that game has, similar to like every game has yellow handholds now. And the thing is,
yellow handholds.
The thing is, in a game like Horizon, those are necessary because the game is relying on you seeing them and engaging with them in that way. Like the level design is not put together in such a way that you are organically meant to find the solution to problems. And that's as good of a game as that game might be. It's frustrating, especially again after a Ghost of Tsushima. That's the game that really changed how I saw open worlds in a way unlike any other game did, except for Breath of the Wild 3 years before it, where just having the whole wind mechanic where you swipe up on the touchpad and the wind blows behind you in the direction of the objective that you have set. There's still a map if you want to engage with a map, of course, but you have to swipe up and watch the way that the grass and the trees are blowing, which makes you look at the new landmarks that you might not see. It makes you look at the fox dens that you might not realize are there. It makes you look at in the sky to see 4 different kinds of smoke, where white smoke is a little village, black smoke is a Mongol encampment, because they're burning things, they're burning buildings down. And it just makes that whole experience of that game so compelling because you don't have to have that urge to reach for your phone to be distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Moriarty's point, the diegetics of that game are masterful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Really, sort of fascinatingly, one of the few games I think that has done this very well is Halo Infinite. It's one of the few games where I found myself actually, if you think about it, right, how many times did you find yourself just sitting there and looking around the world of Halo? I don't know, it's a terrible game, but they did manage to do that in the campaign, I think, kind of well, where it was like, you know what, I'm going to walk up to the top or fly up to the top of that mountain and see what's up there. And you don't see that feeling in a lot of these open world games anymore.
Usually it was nothing, though, is the problem. Like, they didn't give you good rewards.
There was nothing there. That was the problem with Halo.
Yeah, well, I think that ends up being one of my pet peeves in games, because Kevin watched me play Doom once, and you saw that I was just looking all around for stuff, and there were often rooms and whole areas that were supposed to be part of the arena that weren't necessarily there for exploration, right? And I would just go around, like, looking at everything, like looking at every wall and, trying to interact with stuff. And it was like, I think for me, I just want that kind of stuff to be pointed. And I want it to be like, okay, if this is a place of interest, I should go there.
I agree.
There should be something there, right?
That was going to be sort of my second thing. I'll jump on it real quick before coming back around to you, Em, because it's one that...
I have my
you have yours. Okay, so we'll go to you first then.
Yeah.
But real quick, while we're on the subject of that, it's Final Fantasy 16. I've been playing it the last couple days. I've been really enjoying it. I'm not going to say anything in detail, but one of the things that I love is something I never thought I would have loved a few years ago. You have a dog. You have a big dog that is like your companion. The entire game, I'm assuming, he probably dies. I don't know, but I'm going to assume he dies because he's a dog in a media piece. So I named him Marley. You can't name him, but anyway.
Strong prediction.
You have this thing they call it Animal Instinct jokingly, where if you press down on the left stick, the L3 button, the dog will specifically go to where you are supposed to go next, so that you know which other rooms you can go to before you go to the objective. So it's only there if you ask for it. It doesn't tell you outright you're supposed to go here, unless maybe it does if you wait like 10 minutes or whatever, probably. But if you ever get lost, it tells you where to go. There are some areas that are dark, so it'll tell you where to go. There are areas where you know that something's going to get locked behind you if you go into the wrong room. And I hate that. And it's one of the biggest level design pet peeves I have. So that game, having that, I started using it not to know where to go, but to know where not to go yet, like next,
Yeah, right.
And it's one of my favorite things about that game, in a game with a lot of things that I really, really like. So Nico, what was your first pet peeve?
Oh, man. Okay, so...
Or not pet peeve, I'm sorry, but improvement.
I know that I'm going to sound maybe reductive in this, but I want to see them bring the fun back to video games. I know
you
I'm
bring
sounding...
your own fun now.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I know that I'm sounding like Tim Robinson, right? Where he's like, when are you going to go back to doing the good shit? But, I mean, when are they going to go back to doing the good shit, right? Like, when are they going to remember that video games are supposed to be fun and not supposed to be work, right? I don't want my video games to be...
I'm going to throw you one on this one, Nico, and say that the problem is that you're not playing indie titles.
Yes. I was going to say the same thing.
I mean, that notwithstanding, I just it's the checklisting and it's the quest lines being non-meaningful, right?
Yeah.
Where you go and you do a quest and it's just go here, do this, come back, go here, do this, come back. And it's just that over and over and over and over. And I just want to see more variety. I want to see more purpose. I want to see more like in Ghost of Tsushima with I think it was actually all of the major NPCs in that game, right? Tomoe, Norio, and the third one. They were all meaningful stories. They were all sub-stories within this story, so you're here experiencing this, and they're well-written characters as branches of the main story. They all play into the main story, and it's fun and it's engaging, right? And they're not all samey quests. And that's what I mean by bring the fun back to video games.
Yeah, I think like there's a risk that you sound like a real get off my lawn old man when making points like this. But to me, on this sort of topic, there was a lot more genre variety even 10 years ago in the AAA space than there is now. Mm-hmm. Like you look at like, where have single player FPS games gone? There's not that many. Where have arcade races gone? There's kind of none at all in that space.
They're in the Nicholas Vault. They're just not going to be released. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I think
like your F-Zero type games.
Yeah, like I think those games for a while were platformed alongside the big grand open world game in the AAA space. And the indie game scene has like picked up a lot of the slack, and there's amazing indie games going on. But it doesn't feel like there's a Burnout or Need for Speed equivalent. I know Need for Speed still comes out, but Unbound is shit.
Well, even then, when you say, like, because you said the racing games existed alongside the big open world titles, the only racing games of substance nowadays are also checklisty open world titles. It's the Forza Horizon games. It's the Need for Speeds, where I love Need for Speed Most Wanted 1. I think that game's incredible. And that's one of the only open world Need for Speed games that I really would still vibe with today, because it didn't have that checklisty nature to it. At a point, they all kind of congealed, homogenized.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, right? You're seeing the sort of commodification, right? We're seeing the Target effect of going into a Walmart to buy art, and what do they have in there? They have Live, Love, Laugh, right? Versus buying actual art from artists. But the thing is, though, right, you see somebody, Nico, you brought up F-Zero. I saw the sales numbers of F-Zero today trending on Twitter, because it sold 30,000 units on its last game. 30,000, not million, 30,000 units. That's not enough for Nintendo, a multi-billion-dollar company, to jump in there and care about bringing it back. And that's why F-Zero has died. Every single installment of F-Zero has sold less than the one before it.
Yeah.
And while F-Zero 1 sold 2 million copies, F-Zero, 5 or 6 or whatever, it has sold 30,000.
Yeah. And one only sold that much.
So it's not a game that people want.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But it feels like there could be multiple failures there, right? Like
and that's why you go to the indie titles where 30,000 copies is a big win.
Yeah, and I was going to say, for one, F-Zero really only sold in the first place because it was one of the only titles that used Mode 7. But B, if you wanted another F-Zero, there's Redout. There's a game called Redout that just had a sequel called Redout 2. There's Wipeout. Wipeout's like
said
free.
That like the title was going to be totally different. There's Redout, who had a sequel whose title was Redout 2.
There's Wipeout. The Wipeout games are free if you have the PS Plus collection, or not anymore, I guess. But those are similar.
Wipeout, like the TV show?
No, Wipeout came first.
Yes.
It's a racing game series.
It's a racing game. Don't worry about
it. Okay.
Yeah,
there's
you're good.
Another one that exists that's an indie game, the purest of indie games, because I think the Redout team got bought by Epic, maybe. I think maybe. But there's one that I saw on Twitter, which is where you find all the good indie games nowadays, apparently, where it was this F-Zero styled game, but you're on like an actual tube, and you can go anywhere on that tube, like while you're like grinding on this, essentially a pipe. And there's like tricks, and there's like different subpaths you can take. It's only a demo that they had out so far, but the most creative stuff you're going to find is going to be in the indie scene, because indie games aren't going to make money anyway, so why not try? As much as it sucks to say.
Yeah, and it's because dev costs are so much higher now than they were then.
Yeah,
I don't try because I have a Mac. But that's
well, sure. But a lot of these games exist on console. Like Redout exists on console. There was another one, Fast RMX existed. It was a Switch launch game, and everyone wanted them to make the next F-Zero game. And Nintendo obviously didn't do that, because why would they do that? The only time to do it would be now, because the Switch games, any game that comes to Switch does better for Nintendo. You know, Metroid is now a high-selling franchise for the first time ever.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I think it's an issue of horizons rather than an issue of, unless you're complaining about it in the scope of the AAA gaming space, but that's just kind of a condemnation of AAA gaming as a whole to some extent at that point, you know?
Yeah, no, AAA gaming sucks, right? Like, there's no good games. There's no AAA games that are great anymore, and that's fine. It's okay. Go buy an indie game. They're $20.
Yeah.
Your $70 game is garbage.
God of War was great.
No, it really wasn't. I'm not going to have that argument right now, but no, it wasn't.
We'll have we'll talk about this offline, because I have a bump.
I don't really like it either. I think God of War sucks, but you know,
it's bad. It's
I'm
a
with
bad
them
game.
On this one. It's bad. It's boring.
Oh my God.
I'm not into it.
Take me out of this YouTube short, Chris. I don't want to be in this one.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be in the. Don't put me in the screenshot.
I think there is a lot of good AAA games still. I just think the variety is way down.
As a whole, I agree with you completely. But I think that you know, the individual doesn't prove the statistic type vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like we're just assholes on the internet saying shit. You know,
it's what we do. And you had a couple more you wanted to run through. I don't know that I have any more. So if you want to run through them rapid fire.
So secondly,
one more, but
okay.
I have items that I think are possible if we get a major tech breakthrough, but they're not necessarily inevitable. Things like better procedural generation or real-time machine learning. But I think the thing that is most exciting personally is dynamic economies. So prices, availability, whatever, changing based off of player actions and AI decisions.
Yeah.
So yes, player-driven economies, but also true NPC-driven economies, where if you kill all of the farmers, the food disappears, right? Or imagine City Skylines 3, where the city economic management is responsive and realistic enough that real cities simulate within it. Or even real estate or speculative trading, right? Like we see kind of the beginnings of these with like GTA 5 or the fucking Fable.
Not even
but like
GTA
to actually
that was such a lie.
You know,
sorry.
To see it where you can invest in property and businesses in Fable 10 and your actions actually improve or hinder your own investments or the investments of others, right? I would love to play a game where I can cause the kingdom to go into bankruptcy or where I can break the economy by successfully cornering the wheat market, causing food prices to skyrocket because I have the only working wheat farm.
So you're a stock trader.
You play Minecraft.
We went two completely different directions there. Holy shit. Wow.
Good.
No, I agree with that. I as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, what GTA lied about doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
that's
finally,
really good, though. I like that.
Yeah. No, I don't know if
finally I have a
it's
wish
really
list item.
Okay.
So this is something that I don't think is super likely, but it's something that I super want to see. And there's kind of like the nebulous idea of like an in-depth personalized tutorial where each player gets a tutorial based on their skill level. But the thing that I want is the potential for environmental interactions, meaningfully interacting with objects that in turn meaningfully interact with the world that they're in. Think what Peter Molyneux would promise, right? So knocking over a fence to make a path and then watching it become overgrown or watching, the local people cut down the trees in order to replace the fence, decreasing the local animal populations through hunting, which in turn causes the predators to die out, or building a road and removing the bandits and the wolves in the forest, right? Which in turn leads to the development of a trade route, which in turn influences cultural growth or conflict. Dynamically shaped game societies. Essentially, I want Dwarf Fortress 2050.
I was going to say that too. On the first part of your point, I was going to say Dwarf Fortress.
Yes, so I want that. I think that's a wish list item that we won't see in the next generation, but I really, really want to see that.
I think it's
that
interesting.
That would be sick if it's...
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say that would be sick if it's done right. As long as, going back to my other point, they make sure that the game is still fun on top of that and not just like tedium. You know,
I mean, EVE Online
that, right?
is it's a spreadsheet, but people still enjoy that to an extent. So I'm not even so worried that it'd be quote unquote fun, because I think anybody can find fun in anything. There are people out there today playing Spider-Man. Okay,
yeah, I know how are they enjoying that shit?
God.
Hey, in Spider-Man, there are dynamic crimes, and by doing them, you get dynamic Alex Jones podcasts. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Checkmate.
Minnie, you gonna do some dynamic crimes, Minnie?
Yeah, I've done a lot of dynamic crimes in my time. Thanks for asking. I try not to talk about it.
I was gonna say that I think that the main bottleneck on that one is actually memory. Like, a game like again, a Tears of the Kingdom doesn't exactly do what you're saying, of course, but it does do stuff where, you know, you cut down a tree and the tree is actually gone until they physically have to reset the world with the blood moon, because the game will just crash because the whole game is a running memory leak essentially. And I think that's the main bottleneck. I mean, the Switch has like no RAM anyway, but that aside, I could see a game like another Fable, for example, assuming that one's good. I don't think it will be, but I hope it is, because I like Fable a lot.
I sure hope so.
But a game like a Fable, or like an indie produced but still AAA Zelda style of game that's not a Genshin Impact, I could see them taking the Breath of the Wild open air format and making essentially a 3D Dwarf Fortress like you had just asked, because the bones are there. I think it's just that, like you said, technologically, I don't know how we get there anytime soon.
No, so that's something I would really like to see eventually, right? So we've got where I think is inevitable, and then what I think we're going to maybe have if the technology breaks through with the dynamic economies. But then this, man, right, I want to play a game. I want that open world game that every indie developer out there who ever started a Steam Greenlight, thing, they promised they were going to make that one open world game to rule them all. I want that. I still want to play it. And if it's a Fable 5, I'm cool with that,
Yeah. You'll take Starfield and you'll like it.
Yeah, man, right? Like Starfield, if it could come out and be great, that would be awesome.
I hope so. I mean, they need a win.
They really do, because otherwise he's getting fired.
He's straight up. There's no way he's not.
Phil Spencer will be fired if Starfield is bad. I tweeted about this before. And
controversial take time. Peter, what's your thought on Phil Spencer?
Used car salesman. That guy's sketchy as. Hey, dude, he says all the right things and releases the shittest video games. I don't know. Like, I don't know. The irony, in my opinion, here is the Xbox Series X is like my favorite console ever. I think it's fantastic. But he's just, I don't know. Every time he says anything, I can like hear this guy is saying the thing that gamers will love. And he's not backing up any of his words with actions that are meaningful.
Which is sad. It's really sad because he says some of the things where you're like, no, I agree. Accessibility is really important in gaming.
Absolutely. And I think that strives towards accessibility are fantastic.
Yes.
And I think his interviews with Jeff Gerstmann over the years have been incredible. I think he'd be absolutely a lovely guy to hang out with and talk to and pick his brain at all his opinions. But the way that company has been run, whether it's his fault or not, it has been very poor, and he is at the top.
If it's not, it still is. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You can't. The buck does stop with him. And speaking of buckets, all hail buckets. So you had one more improvement you wanted to suggest, I believe.
I think I have one too.
Okay. I want to see less platforming. No, I want to see more officially licensed rhythm games that are not super complex, right? Because as we started going down this Guitar Hero line, they started adding more mechanics to something that simply doesn't need it, right? It's DDR, but you don't gotta get off your couch. I love it.
I'm excited for you.
One of the things I love about playing...
Go ahead. Sorry.
What?
Sorry, go ahead.
It's one of the things I love about playing the drums, right? I sit down. And it's not like super physical. You play the drums, right? And I want to see.
This is 2 weeks
I
in a
just
row
want to see
where
that.
you said your hobbies include sitting down.
I've been playing the drums for 18 years, dude. What do you want from me, man?
Great. I really love the drums because I just get to sit.
I'm excited for you to have
get
Clone Hero when you get a PC.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that'll solve
this
your problem right there.
You know, yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to like M taking the wind out of my sails and just saying, yeah, you should just play indie games more, which is definitively true, right? I think we've seen mathematically that's true. Because of something like a Clone Hero, right? I want those 5 little buttons and the clicky strum bar, and that's all I want. And I want licensed music, meme music, I don't care. But I don't want like Friday Night Funkin' where it's like specific to that game. Like I want to listen to the songs. You know, I want the licensed music. And obviously we had something like that in Fuser, where it sort of made music production, the production side of it, maybe a little more gamified. And I really like that. And I want more stuff like that. I think that's awesome.
I just want to jump in really quick to explain what Fuser is, because you can name drop Fuser, but no one knew that game came out. It was a game made by...
I assume people would Google it.
No, I mean, they could. It's a game made by, I believe it was Harmonix. It was their last game before they got bought by Epic, where it was a full DJ suite, not like DJ Hero. Like you could get the individual samples of the drums, the vocals, the guitar, the bass of any song that was on the list, including like a bunch of DLC ones, all licensed music. And then you got different EQ patterns to add on. You could adjust down tempo them, up tempo them, etc. It existed for a year.
Minor key.
Yes, major and minor. It existed for about a year, and then it got shut down. So it's just gone now. Because I'm assuming no one in the music industry wanted that to exist, I'm assuming.
Well, I had not heard that it came out. I would have snagged that up immediately wherever I could have.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what I wanted DJ Hero to be back in the day. But DJ Hero, at the time, I didn't know what DJs did. And so now that I know
Wicca, right?
That's what I thought, right? You think it's like right, you think it's going to be that little scratching sound, but it's not. And it's a lot of fading back and forth between the songs, and that game is about hitting those cues. And if you don't know what DJs do, it's not a fun and engaging game. You want Fuser. Fuser is what you're looking for. So I want more stuff like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to get up on as long of a soapbox as I did. Yeah,
he says after I went off.
I think you would. I'll say this: I had to play this for prep for the charity room later this month. You'll hear plugs from that coming from us in the near future, because about half the Crub crew is involved in this year's event. But I'm playing Sayonara Wild Hearts as one of the games that I'm playing, and I had to practice that game. And I think you'd actually. It's not a licensed soundtrack, but it's music that could be licensed music. It's like actually genuinely a bunch of like pop bangers. And like an hour of game, and it's all rhythm, but it's all like visual rhythm spectacle, like a Res Infinite type game. I know you don't know what that is, but
I do. I know what Res is.
We played Res at your house the one time in VR. That's right. Yeah, when I was showing you VR. Yeah. So I think you'd enjoy that. Peter, do you have? You said you might have one more.
I'll give it a try.
I do. Well, I have 2 more because I've been thinking about. We're just going to keep this podcast going.
No, keep it going.
Go off.
I've been thinking about this musical idea, and when I was a kid, I loved light gun games. Still do, but I did when I was a kid too. And I'd love for some sort of a Namco light gun game collection to come out with one of those new Sinden style light guns that's super responsive. Just a quick point, there's not a lot of depth to talk about this with, but bring back light gun games on home consoles. The other point I had...
I was going to say that I think we did see one of those like in the past couple of years, right?
That one that Bolt reviewed.
Yeah, the one they sent me.
That was no good. Good.
It wasn't bad.
But that's the only one, right?
But it only had like 5 games, I think.
Yeah.
It was fine. I feel like the Switch should be capable. I know the Switch has an IR sensor. So it should on paper be capable in the same way that the Wii light gun stuff was functional to some degree. Obviously it was the Wii mode, so the aiming wasn't stellar. But it should be doable. I mean, we have a House of the Dead remake that's coming out soon.
Yeah, there's this like kickstarted light gun that's coming out that is like a Raspberry Pi in the gun, and it scans the 4 corners of your screen, and it creates a box, and it's way more responsive than any like IR sensor
so cool.
stuff. So
That's
they should
That sounds really neat.
It's really great. And you don't have to like attach anything to your TV or anything. It just detects where your screen is. It's great.
That's so fucking cool.
Would buy.
Yeah, you can. You can buy. Do buy.
I probably will.
What was the name of that
I feel
again?
like a salesman. It's called the Sinden Lightgun. Sinden.
Okay, hopefully
And
that
then you
will
had
be...
one more thing, didn't you? There.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing, while we're talking about our dream open world game where you knock over a fence and then a path grows over the fence, I've been thinking a lot about what I've always wanted from open world games. And part of it is that kind of like, imagine all these possibilities with like, you know, crazy shit like that. Something I love about the Yakuza games is they sneak in mini games like everywhere.
Yep.
It's like you can go into every building, not every building, you can go into a heap of buildings and just go and sing songs or play pool. You can't play pool in any of them, but you can, you know, run a business.
I think you can in one of them.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And like, you know, do baseball and stuff. And there's a game that just came out called Dave the Diver. I haven't played it yet.
I saw
the trailer for it though. I've downloaded it. I'm ready to play it. The trailer for it just shows this game where like you do all this diving and then suddenly you're farming and suddenly you're running a sushi store and you're doing this and that. And I think when I play open world games, like how many times have you played a video game, seen like a pinball machine in the video game, walked up to it and been disappointed that you can't play it?
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Like every time. And I think a video game, I think the Yakuza games are really, really good at this, but more games I wish would design themselves around showing you a thing and then having that little like, oh wow, you can actually do this moment where there's a mini game tied to it.
Yeah.
And make a really small world like I guess I'm just talking about Yakuza, but I wish games would trend further towards what Yakuza does in this space.
Yep. It's valid.
And I really like the idea of discovery. Test Drive Unlimited was really good at this too. You'd see a house in the game, you'd be like, oh, that's a cool house, and then it turns out you can buy it and you can own the garage and put all your cars in the garage and walk around in first person and open all your car doors, and stuff like that I think is so much more novel and interesting in video games than I think AAA developers realize. But it is a lot of work to do all that stuff, and I fully realize it's somewhat unrealistic in most games, but still, that's something I'd like to see a lot more of.
I was going to
say... There was
a
game that did a fascinating thing with that, which was Homefront 2, where the arcade, if you go into the garage, the arcade has the only PC port of Time Splitters 2 ever on it, randomly.
It's crazy. It's so funny. And people have modded the game to strip out Homefront 2 just so you can play Time Splitters, which is great.
And I was going to say, with the thing with the Yakuza / Like a Dragon now games, is... I want my games to be shallower so that we can have more of that stuff. Because I'm not saying those games 100%. Are shallow. They're not. But they release 1 to 3 of those a year for the last like decade. From 2017, when we in the West got Yakuza 0, we had Yakuza 0 and Kiwami in the same year. We had Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 6 in the same year, and Judgment the same year, I believe, as well. We had the Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 remasters. We had the second Judgment game. We had Yakuza Ishin remake. We have 2 more Yakuza games coming in the new saga of games. They keep making these games, and part of it is that they've had all these features in there the whole time, except for the 1 and 2 that I want to come back, where in Japan, there are really these things where you could just pee in, if you aim in the right spot when peeing in a urinal, you get it's like a mini game. I want that because then people won't miss in a bar. It'd be really cool.
That's sick. Oh, they should have a mini game where you shower. I know they have that in Red Dead Redemption 2. But
that would convince a lot of people to shower.
Encourage hygiene. Yeah, this cool character that I like showers. I should shower.
I look up to him.
It's a reminder.
But no, I've said before that I think Yakuza might be my modern favorite series because of stuff like that, because it does something that no other games do, but that every game could. It's not a lot of extra work to make things that much more immersive with such tiny little details. You just need to have the passion for it, and you need to decide whether you want to scale down your world to make room for these smaller features, or if you do want a big, empty, lifeless world. Because it's one or the other at this point currently.
Yeah. We've talked about this before, but likewise, Yakuza is my favorite currently running video game series.
Play Yakuza.
And I think is it what was the 7th one? Ishin's probably my game of the year this year, even though it's a remake, and the 7th game is probably one of my favorite games ever made, alongside Far Cry 2, which we've already discussed is the best game ever made.
Objectively the best game of
I
all
mean,
time.
it's really good, though. It's so systemic, right? Like, it's so good. You get to just throw out a Molotov. It's cool. It's great.
Yeah,
it's
that's
fun.
right.
Is it fun?
It's incredibly fun. But
stressful fun. Like a
It's
a
hard.
thriller. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those games where, like, what are you going to do? I don't know. I don't actually know what my objective is right now.
Yeah.
So you just do.
If we're circling all the way back to games that show a mini-map, it was really good at, like, you had to pull up the map and look at it and look at where it's telling you to go, then put the map away and figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
All of the stuff. So I have one last question for you, because I think we're going to be wrapping this up here, Minnie. And I think this is kind of, we're going to go back to the beginning here a little bit. What's your most memorable experience or interaction as a YouTuber so far?
Ooh,
Whoa.
that's a good question.
The most memorable experience was someone tweeting me saying, I think I just walked past Mini-Me, and then turns out we were in the same gym, and it was kind of funny because he walked over. I'm sitting on a legs machine, so I'm sitting down, he's standing up, being like, "Hey man, love your cars videos." I'm like, "Thanks." And then we just go back to like exercising on opposite parts of the room. But like I guess there's a massively surreal nature to being a YouTuber that catches me up a lot. And I think a lot of like it's stuff like making friends or even just chatting to like people who influenced me in my life. Like having a profile on the internet means people notice you, and having like people that I admire so much notice me senpai, is quite rewarding. And I guess that's not an individually memorable experience. I think like it's such an all-encompassing question. There are things that I'm immensely proud of. There's work that I've done that I'm incredibly proud of. There's work that I've done that I'm incredibly embarrassed by. I don't know. I don't know. I'm doing PAX this year, which is sort of my first public appearance as a YouTuber. So I'm
That'll be
interested
really
to see
cool.
how
Which
that goes.
PAX?
PAX Melbourne, Australia.
Oh.
Which is a thing. But yeah, no, I guess that's a hard question to answer. Aside from the dude who saw me at the gym and it was super awkward, that was very memorable.
I like that one a lot though, because that's like the ideal YouTuber experience. Because it's just, hey, like your stuff, cool. You maybe chat for a minute and then you go back to existing. Like, I feel like a lot of YouTubers have the horror stories of they're in the bathroom peeing and someone goes, "Oh my god, big fan," and they go and like try and shake your hand while you're peeing.
Yeah. There's a lot of funny. Like, Square-Eyed Jack, who was a YouTuber, was in town a couple of weeks ago, and we just spent a day hanging out. And another thing happened with Color Shed a few months ago, who's another YouTuber. And these are like my peers, and there's just something, even with you guys, like talking to you guys now is quite surreal to me, even though we've known each other for a really long time. I guess it's always quite crazy to me that, I don't know, this weird thing I do on the internet links me up with other people that I admire. I think that's sort of the most rewarding part of what I do. Sorry to get all sincere.
No,
but
that's the right answer, I think.
Yeah. I'm and I have a lighter-hearted, quick question for you, if you don't mind. Favorite Fast and Furious movie?
Ooh.
Dude, probably Tokyo Drift.
Same.
But maybe, like, I don't know, 5 is good, 1 is good. The Tokyo Drift is kind of not a Fast and Furious movie, but it's such a sublime movie. Like, dude, that movie, the way it's shot is gorgeous. Like, I don't know what it is, but every single frame in Tokyo Drift is beautiful. And people are just like, "Oh, Tokyo Drift, fucking stupid, dumbass movie." You should look at, like, the cinematography in Tokyo Drift. Like, pretty much every frame in that movie is, like, fucking frame it and put it on your wall good. And I feel like
it's gorgeous, but Lucas Black is a bad actor.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun. But
yeah, that's the charm of it. Yeah.
But it is a beautiful, beautiful film, and sometimes I will just pop it on at any scene just to look at it. Like there's a way that movie sweeps me away that is surprising for a fucking Fast and Furious movie.
I really want there to be a Photoshop now of you, but as the florist from Yakuza, the guy with the hundreds of camera and TV monitors, and they're all just different scenes of Tokyo Drift. I really want that now. It'd be beautiful.
Me too.
Start making AMVs of my music to Tokyo Drift clips.
Oh, dude, the soundtrack in that movie too.
Oh, it's all, dude. Pharrell.
Dude.
Oh, man.
When Fast, are we on 11 now? Or are we on 10 Part 2?
We're on 10 Part 2 coming out soon. But
Okay.
10 just happened.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 just happened.
So when Final Fantasy X-2 comes out, we'll have you back on to do a discussion of that movie with Nico and
Comparing
other
them?
people who care about that movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That sounds like a plan. And
I was gonna say, because I got the Hobbs and Shaw poster right
true.
here.
He does have Hobbs and Shaw right behind
I
him at all times.
I think he just called it Final Fantasy X too.
I did, yeah.
He did.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's
Yeah, no,
FF10 too. It's correct. Like they're
no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I want Vin
Just
Diesel in
wondering if
short
that was
shorts
a
holding guns on the
Freudian
cover.
slip.
No, but with that, I think it goes without saying that you are more than welcome to pop on anytime. If you were like, hey, I want to talk about this, give us a time. We'll figure it out. We'll throw you on.
Oh, I love that.
You are the
if I ever have a
unofficial.
bone to pick with a Sony game, I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even if you ever want to do a pre-recorded clip and just send it in, we'll just play it.
And we'll pretend that you're there with us live.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll send in topics.
Yeah. So
The mini-me manifesto has come in today. We're going to be playing this.
we'll get art
All
for
right,
that
we got a
everything.
video message. from me.
Oh, I love that so much. Really shitty Zoom, like cameo.
Like a Nokia.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I love that so much. So yeah, you're welcome to come on anytime. You're more than welcome to. You know where to find the three of us. We're on here every week, so we won't plug ourselves this week. But where can we find you, Minnie?
Well, when I was 8 years old, I spelled this username in a really stupid way. So it's minimme, but it's MINIMME. So search that up, and I should come up on YouTube and Twitter and stuff. And check me out. Would appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure, and I'd love to come on again.
Anytime. Literally anytime. You boys have anything else you want to say before we call it for today's episode? It sounds like a no. Make sure you leave a review if you didn't already. Make sure you hit the like button if you didn't already. If you decide you don't want to like the video after you've liked it, you can take it back, but the likes really do help until then. We will see you next week for another episode of the Crubcast, and until then, we still don't have an outro. Goodbye.